Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do our first working video. The previous video was put up so that I could talk a little bit about some of the materials that we're going to be using. It is purely factual and a reference, but I will go through those things again as we're going along. So our first project is applique, to apply, and we're making it very simple. We're applying one piece of fabric to a backing piece of fabric to make our postcard. I'm going to talk you through my process. What I tend to do is I'll look for a simple picture on Pinterest, with Google Images, children's colouring in books, magazines, newspapers, and when I'm seeing something I like, I will cut it out and use it. So this first image was a Pinterest image, and obviously somebody has stitched the shape onto the backing paper with a buttonhole stitch. So I thought that was a nice simple rabbit. What I did next was I scanned it into my computer. I enlarged it a little bit so that it would fill more of the postcard, and printed it out in black and white and went round the edges in a thick marker. If you aren't going to use it again, then you could actually use this one as your cutout template. But what I do from that is I'll trace it, usually up against a window, and get the black lines to come through, or you could use tracing paper. It's entirely up to you. From that I will then cut it out, and I have my paper pattern, and you can see I've used this already. It's got pinholes in it. This will then be pinned to a fabric and cut out, or this could be freezer paper. It could be ironed to the fabric and then cut out, and I'll show you the difference in a minute. So from that I made this one piece of fabric here. I put on the template the extra little lines for my sewing, and I sewed that on my sewing machine. It's a very narrow zigzag, but it's quite close together, and that was sufficient for this particular project. I've added the Earth Has Music for those who listen, and used variegated thread on the outside. This time it's a broader zigzag, but still the stitches are close together. I have attached the pelmet biling to the back, put a little stamp on, and I just need to draw down the middle just to make it look a little bit more like a postcard on the back. So that was the first one. The other simple shape that I did was a seahorse, and again this was found on Pinterest, and I scanned it into the computer and printed this out in black and white. Same process, round the edge in black, so that you can make as many templates from it that you would like. Notice I've put the eye in on there and some little lines for when I come to doing the machining. So this is the actual cutout. Lots of pinholes, I've used it a few times. And on this one I used a buttonhole stitch. Again, it had Bondo web on the back, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. And so that was ironed on and glued to the backing fabric, and then I hand stitched it round before doing the zigzag round the edge, putting my little stamp on the back and the line down the middle. Now notice on this one that you can see the stitching through the back. There are two ways that you can avoid that. You use a paler colour thread in the first place, or you put an extra layer of fabric or 2 layers of pelmet Vilene. Whichever you think when you've looked at it will work the best. But because this is just practice and it's just an example, it didn't matter that you could see it. I've put some glitter glue on the fin there just to give it a bit of sparkle. Any simple shape can be used. Thinking about Christmas trees, simple shape. Each shape has its own stump at the bottom, its own trunk, and it's the same fabric, so it's just a simple cutout. Looks more effective because there are 3 on the in the composition, and there are beads on the 2 outside ones, a button here, and this one's got more lines of stitch. I don't know if you can see that if I bring it up, if it'll focus. So that's quite effective. This is even simpler, no trunk, it's just got the line of stitch down the middle and is obviously stuck down in some way. Other simple shapes that you could use: cross section of an apple and a pear. You could fit probably 2 apples on a postcard, but you could make a pear big enough to fill it and then put something else on, say a saying of some sort like I have on there. Oh, happy birthday or whatever. This is another simple shape. For this one, I got the shape quite a long time ago, and all of this in the centre is my doodling. So the original, I think, was quite a lot bigger, and I resized it on the computer and printed it onto fabric that can go through an inkjet. The backing, old jeans, and the lines of stitch are done before you apply your shape, and the thread is quite thin so that you can't detect it underneath the shape. If it had been heavier, there might have been some ridges. And then I did a tiny little mouse button. It had a loop on the back, so I broke the loop off and then just glued it down with some really strong glue, permanent glue. This is another idea where you don't have a plain background, you have something maybe related to the pictures that you're putting on. It doesn't have to be. In this case, I had this Scotty dog fabric, and I thought putting 2 dogs on would make that look quite pretty. Just card on the back at the moment because it's not finished. Now this takes us beyond the one shape as the Scotty dogs does. 2 shapes but the same shape, and we've got 3 different hearts on here. This isn't a fabric postcard. I'm going to put it onto a greetings card, but that's my take on what you can see there. Similar but not the same. So the ones we're going to look at in a bit more detail are the rabbits and the seahorse. But first, this bird. I found this bird, and it was very simple, obviously, quite childlike, which quite appealed to me. And the actual thing could just be one piece of fabric, and that's what I did for a card. I did one piece of fabric. It's got the beak cordoned off there, a stitched wing, a stitched eye and stitched feet. So very easy to do because the shape was just in one. But of course you can break it down and have a different piece of fabric for the wing, a different piece for the beak, which is what I've done on there, and that's ready to be stitched. So it'll look quite different to the original one. Won't look as childlike because it's got that extra bit of complication in the use of 3 different fabrics. And again, that was bonderwebbed on first, then the shape of the bird over the top, and then the wing onto the bird. So going back to the rabbit and the seahorse, got a pile of examples here to show you. This first one, I've used freezer paper. I put it through the computer and had the lines printed on and cut it off so that would fit on there. So now I'm just waiting to iron the bonderweb on the back. Then I'll peel this off once I've cut it out, and then I'll peel this off and I'll have my piece of fabric ready to go onto the backing. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is you just really pin it well in all the spaces, and that's just the fabric with the bonderweb that's already been attached, and all I have to do is cut it out now, and the bonderweb will then just need taking off the back. I've got a curled up fin here. So once I've cut my rabbit out and applied the bonderweb to the back, it will be ironed onto the backing sheet of fabric. I've drawn on with a pencil the marks for the extra little bits that would come under here or around here, along there, and I've sorted out a fluffy tail, so when I complete that one, he or she is going to have a fluffy tail. Oops, that's the backing piece. So this is cotton on the top, and I've got calico behind, because the calico is a good stabiliser, and it means that it will ensure a good stitch, because the calico gives that extra thickness to it all. On here I've attached the seahorse in the same way as this, except it was cut out in this way rather than with the freezer paper, and he's ready to be stitched as well, and that's his backing fabric. So what I thought I would do, now that I've shown you the processes, is just to go through ironing this on so you see how it's done, and cutting it out. I won't bother cutting this one out because it takes a little bit longer. It's a little bit more fiddly with the bits here and the tail in particular, but I'll show you on that rabbit. And I'm going to machine one of them, machine stitch one of them and hand stitch the other, so that you can see that you can do it in 2 different ways. I'm not going to bore you with the stitching. I will show you what I might do as a starting point, and then do the stitching and come back. So for the moment I'm just going to pause the video while I set up with the iron. Okay, I'm ready. I've got the iron on sort of a medium heat. I have a mat to iron on. I've got a piece of non-stick parchment here, baking parchment, whatever you'd like to call it. I have my piece of fabric, the bondeweb is on the back. What I have to do now is just apply some heat. Always remember to use some non-stick parchment, an oven liner or something like it to protect your iron and to protect your surface. Give that a good iron, make sure there's a good contact. Then we need to leave it to cool. Once it's cool, I can peel off the backing and I'll be able to cut it out. It's as easy as that. So the glue edge goes to the fabric and you iron on both sides. However, if you've got any glue showing, make sure that when you're ironing it, it's covered on both sides. I didn't in this case, so it was okay for me not to enclose it. Put a little mark on the back to start off peeling the backing away, and we then have our rabbit ready to cut out. I'm going to turn off the iron. I've got some really good scissors here which make it easy to cut. Okay, and because this is freezer paper, it will just peel off. You can reuse this a couple of times, but each time it'll take a little bit of the surface of the fabric off, and eventually you won't be able to use it because it won't have any tackiness at all. So there we have our bunny rabbit with the bondeweb on the back, ready just to iron onto a piece of fabric to be sewn. I'm not going to do that because I'm going to show you what I would do with hand stitch and machine stitch. To get yourself a piece of backing fabric, I've got Calico in here at the moment. It doesn't have to be an old sheet or whatever. Not too patterned, of course, otherwise it will show through. So I've got those two positioned on there, and I'm going to hand sew this one. I'm going to show you a couple of stitches. I'm sure that you will all know what they are, and then I should probably use a combination of stitches to complete it. So I'll just pause the video again while I get myself organised for that. I'm going to show you a couple of stitches on this bit of scrap fabric, but I want to bring this to your attention here on the fabric here. I've put some little marks in the corner to show the corners of the postcard so that I could centralise the rabbit in the when I glued it down. Okay, a running stitch. Simple. Needle up from the back, always leave your knots at the back, and then it is a matter of going along the fabric with evenly spaced stitches. Through to the back, back to the front, then down. So it's a running stitch with the knot at the back. So you could do that on here close to the edge all the way around, and by doing that you can come in and do the little extra shading bits as well. That would be easy. Take it then to the back and resume in the next section. But I always think that buttonhole stitch looks good. I'll just do the first one. Put your thread through to the front and you catch the loop. Then you go to the back and catch the loop. To the back and catch the loop. Up from the back and catch the loop. And that looks particularly nice along the edges of the pattern. I think I would still need to come into these bits with a running stitch or even a back stitch so it was a continuous line. You could also be random and just stitch over it to make it look rustic by doing different lengths of stitch over the edge. And you would do that all the way around. But I'm going to use buttonhole stitch to start me off. So I'll do a little bit, get to a space where the line goes onto the body and show you what I do there. I've got a mark here for the tail, but I'm going to put that on at the end. Probably after I've put it all together, I think. I don't know yet. Okay, I'll start here. And I'm just going to do a back stitch, which is like a running stitch. Start one off, then you come up on the back a little way along here and then go into the hole of the previous stitch and then move along a little bit more here and down into the hole where the previous stitch was. So you get a little bit of definition and a line there. Okay. I'm going to go here, start myself off with buttonhole stitch. And put it through the loop, so I'll catch that now. So there we have the loop. And we pull that flat at the edge of the rabbit. So I would do that all the way around, and when I get back to here I'll catch that in there and pull it back so that it looks like it's continuous. I'm not going to bore you with that. I'll do that off camera and come back, and I think that's all I'm going to do is is a back stitch or a running stitch and a buttonhole stitch to finish this off. So I'll finish this off camera, as I say, and show you at the end. Now for this one, I'm going to machine stitch this one. Notice I haven't got marks to show me where the edges are at the moment. But I shall make sure I have those on when I'm putting the palette violin on the back. So I've got him pinned to a backing piece, and I will go to the machine. I'm going to zigzag all the way around the edges using length of the zigzag about 4. It's quite a decent length, and take the running stitch down to about a half on my machine. The extra lines I might do by hand, or I might stitch on the machine, or I might do a combination so you can see how it works out. So I'll stop the video now and I shall go to the machine and be back in a minute. Hello again. I've been to the machine and I've done the zigzag around the edge, and I must apologise, I said zigzag 4 and that's a load of rubbish. Zigzag 2 with 0.5 for the length of the ordinary stitch. It's zigzag 4 for around the edges. So I apologise for that. And the camera had gone off, so when I came back and explained what I'd done, I'd missed all of it off, so I'll have to do it again. What as I say, I've gone round in this small zigzag. I went in here with a hand stitch with 2 strands of the same variegated thread that I used around the edges, and filled in the definition there. These little bits here, I changed from zigzag to straight stitch and did the little bits on the machine and went back out and then did the zigzag. Did the same here. For the eye, I did it by hand with 2 strands of the same cotton, and I did a back stitch. And I think I'm going to fill the eye in with some Pearl Effect or Nouveau drops or stickles. I've sorted out a few. I'm going to test them on a piece of fabric to see what they look like when they're dry, and I shall put that on as a last finishing touch. So he is now ready. I need to mark up to get him centralised, and then a piece of palette violin on the back in order to stitch around the edges. So put him to one side, we'll come back to him later. I'll get things ready to show you what to do with that one. I've done a little bit more stitching on this, so I've got that to finish. Before I do that and talk you through finishing things off, I thought I might do a little bit about choice and picking out things that go together or opposites that may make things stand out more. And I've done it on card because of course you can use this on card just like you can with the fabric. In fact, it's easier with the card because you just need the piece of card to stick the image onto and then maybe put a sentiment at the top. So I played around with some different backgrounds and different focal images. So as you can see on here, I cut this out on my Big Shot. It's a Tim Holtz die. It's a thin die. And that's where I've got some tape that's you can lay the image on and it'll just pick up the glue rather than having to sit and put tiny little bits of glue on it to stick it down. And I chose this lovely lilac-y background and thought I'll put a patterned paper on the top, and it just doesn't do it for me. I don't know why. I just think it's far too fussy, and the image doesn't show up as well as it does on this one, with a patterned background and a plain front. You may have a different opinion, that's fine, but looking at the two, I prefer this one. This elephant that I did as well. Playing around with colour and pattern with the same shape. Be interesting to know what you think. Butterflies. Again, exactly the same pattern that was cut out, but very, very different results. It is interesting to play around with pattern and colour and shape. Then this one, I decided I was going to cut two of the feather out and put on there. I think that works quite nicely. Again, it was the glue sheet where you stick it down and the glue adheres to the piece of paper or card, and then you can transfer it to the backing piece. But think about composition, think about colour, think about shape, and how things might go together and they might not. The Seahorse here, I had this variegated thread on the machine already, and it has a little bit of blue in it, and I thought, no, I'm going to see what it looks like, and I'm quite pleased with it. I'm quite pleased with the way that it stands out from the background, and it has that little bit of a sheen to it because it's a rayon thread, polyester thread, something like that, that gives it that little bit of sheen. Yeah, so I'm pleased with that. I will finish the rabbit, then I shall come back and show you how to put the violin on the back. Okay. Alright, what I've done with this is I've used one of these cards. It's a watercolour postcard, and you can buy them online at Amazon. Come in a nice little tin. This is the second tin of these that I've used, because I have used them for watercolour as well. But they're the right size. I quite like the rounded corners, so I've put it on there and drawn round it with a friction pen. Then I've put a pin on the line in each section of the rectangle so that I can see the pin on the back here. Then I've put another pin here to hold the violin in one place. So now I can take these pins out and trim round, following the lines that I've drawn on the top. I want to give it curved edges. I always find it easier going round on a curve on the machine, to be honest. My friend doesn't like curves, she likes to do the square pointy bits. Okay, that's done. And now I'm going to iron the violin onto the back. I'll just get my pad and my piece of paper and plug the iron in. So I'm going to do it from the top first. Just straighten that up a bit. You've got a few layers for the heat to get through when you're doing it from the top, so keep it still for a while on there. It's starting to stick, so take the pins out. Then do it from the back. A good press so you've got a good adhesion. There are a few little bits still to trim. Because of course the fabric wasn't flat until it was ironed down. Get rid of that later. I wanted to show you this. Just move the iron out of the way and unplug it. Just give it another quick press on the top to get rid of the pinholes. And press it again once it's been stitched. I always find this quite useful. It's a bit old and battered, but it measures 6 by 4 approximately. So if you're wanting to look at a composition to see how it's working out, you can isolate. So on the bigger piece here, you could isolate and work out where you want the grid to be. I mean, it could even, could even be tilted a little bit, so he's not in the frame as I had it before. So it is a good way of having a look at what's going on. Obviously I've cut this now, so it doesn't matter. What I'm going to do at the machine is go round in straight stitch first to secure the ends, and then go around again in zigzag. And this time it's definitely 4 width for the zigzag and 0.5 for the straight. Be back in a minute. There we have it. I've gone round the edge with the same thread as I did the Seahorse. I'm going to put a little bit of sparkle in his eye and call him finished. I might put a sentiment on there somewhere, but hasn't taken very long. I'm halfway around my bunny rabbit. I'll finish this and get it made up into a card, a postcard, and there'll be pictures of it at the end with some of the other things I've already shown you. I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you fancy having a go and that the video has helped. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. and it would be nice if you could subscribe, and if you liked it, click the like button. Cheerio, bye.